De zevende review van het IMF voor Suriname is wederom succesvol. Het is er allemaal goedgekeurd. Dat betekent dat Suriname wederom een tranche heeft gehad van het IMF. Op een persconferentie op het ministerie van Financiën en Planning is de vertegenwoordiger, de teamleider van IMF, dan ook ingegaan op een aantal zaken. Zaken die volgens haar wel succesvol worden toegepast door de Surinaamse regering. Maar er zijn ook een aantal zaken waaraan de regering nog allemaal aan zal moeten werken.
I want to say just a couple of summary remarks. The macroeconomic situation has stabilized. This is all good news. Inflation is on a steady downward trend. Exchange rate has stabilized. There are good signs of economic recovery. International bond spreads are at historical lows. And donors are increasingly re-engaging with Suriname. World Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, they're here, they're active, as long as many other entities and bilateral donors. So this is all very positive, and this is a sign of Suriname's growing respect in the international community. Debt restructuring process is entering its final stage, and we're happy with the progress there. On the program targets, all the monetary targets have been met. On the fiscal side, the target on social spending has finally been met, and actually both for March and June. So this is a good and important development. We've been waiting for this kind of result for a long time. The targets are the minimum that the government has to spend on social assistance programs. But of course, even though the quantitative targets are met, a lot more has to be done to improve efficiency. There's been a social assistance reform plan that has been finalized in recent months. So now it's time to actually take actions for the government to make sure that not just the amounts that are spent, but those amounts are spent on the people who need it most, and that people who don't need social protection should not be getting it. On the fiscal situation overall, the picture is not as good. The target on the fiscal balance, primary fiscal balance of the central government, it was not met. So a lot more efforts are needed to make sure, to correct course, to make sure that those targets are met going forward. Even though VAT is now performing much better, non-tax revenues are underperforming, and also other types of taxes are also trailing behind. At the same time, expenditure has not been fully contained. There has been overspending on electricity subsidy, partly because of the drought that is affecting the energy mix. It is also important to eliminate waste. From what I've understood, even wealthier households are still receiving a discount of 400 SRD. Those households do not need this kind of discount. And the money that is being spent is about 30 million each month. So, and this is not the money that we have now in the budget. There are some risks to the program, including from very contentious negotiations with the unions. Earlier on, I mentioned and I drove the point about ghost workers. So even though public sector reform is going in the right direction, it is going too slow. And basically, when the reform is going too slow in removing ghost workers or workers who are not even reporting to work without a valid excuse, if you want to stay within a certain budgetary envelope, that means that higher salary increases cannot be accommodated. what it means that the rest of public sector workers are paying for the ghost workers, are subsidizing them, are giving up the potentially higher salary increase so as to retain ghost workers. This reform should be more ambitious so that public sector workers that are working hard can receive proper compensation. It is not possible to both protect ghost workers and also provide good salary increases for the rest of the population. What happens if the union demands are fully met? It's not just a danger to the program. It is also a danger to macroeconomic stability. With an economy that is still below its potential, a very high salary increase in the public sector, which is relatively large, would just feed into inflation and exchange rate depreciation. And this is not what we want to achieve. The sacrifices that the rest of the society has paid should not be in vain. They should not be for nothing. And I do hope that those considerations are kept in mind. This is not about the fund program. There is a general risk to macroeconomic stability if the salary increases of the public sector are not contained. I also wanted to emphasize another point on the electricity subsidies. I know that there are contentious negotiations about formulas and etc., and arguments about rain forecasts. What I want to say is praying for rain is not a good public policy. Let me say it again. Praying for rain is not good public policy. The formula should take into account the evolving energy mix, higher reliance on thermal, higher consumption by the population, lack of savings of electricity that we do observe. All of this adds up, and the budget on electricity subsidies has already been spent. And while it is important to protect the poor and vulnerable, there is no space to waste to subsidize higher income households. If you can proceed faster, that would be much, much better. At the very least, people should be applying for the discount. It should not be given automatically. My res rep gets a 400 SRD discount in his electric bill. I know how much he makes. He is not a poor person. And the government cannot afford this kind of leakage. On the ghost workers, I know I've been beating up this point, but the fact that there's still about 2,500 of them on public payroll, these ghost workers are providing disincentives for the rest of the public sector workers who are working hard. Because if I look and see somebody is receiving a salary for nothing, then why should I work hard? And what happens is that you're creating an army of chronically underemployed, unperforming workers that the private sector cannot absorb. Because why should they even work if for the last 3 years, or 4 years, or 5 years, they've been receiving salary for doing absolutely nothing? Stop protecting them. I'm talking to the unions right now. Stop protecting the ghost workers. Focus on the workers who are working. I want to end my remarks on a positive note. The commitment that I see to macroeconomic stability, to good reforms, to good governance from our counterparts, in particular from the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank, are remarkable. There is high level of ownership. There is an understanding that we're doing these reforms because these are the right reforms for Suriname. They're not there just to check off the box for the IMF program. There is a great deal of ownership. And they are working super hard. But I also want to talk to other ministries that they have to be mindful of their own budget. They have to look at how much they're spending on wages, on salaries, on overtime, on goods and services, on electricity, because they have to also control their budget. The Ministry of Finance cannot do it for them. We're all in this together. We need to resolve this issue together. Your Ministry of Finance also counts on your support and your ownership of this program.